Hello everyone, hope you are doing good. Welcome to Biodiversity series with Dr.Vivek Rana. Topic for today's lecture is Murder Hornet. The theme sounds like a horror or a serial killer movie, but it's a name of an insect which is carrying out serial killing of another insect. The insect has been trending in US this week, just like locusts have been trending in the Asia region. So in this lecture, we will decode what murder hornet is, why it is in news, how does it carry out the serial killings for which it is famous, and finally what should be the control strategy to contain this insect. So let's decode murder hornet. The Asian giant hornet is an insect species which is native to Asia. It's present in Japan, Myanmar, Thailand, and Russia. It's a if you have to decode the biological specific, it belongs to phylum Arthropoda and family is Insecta, just like the other insects are. Scientific name is an interesting one. It is Vespa mandarinia. So this insect is famous as a voracious predator of social insects, notably the honeybees. It is known to carry out a devastating attack on a beehive. It just crawls into the hive, and then a group of 15 to 20 hornet, if they manage to enter that hive, they carry out merciless killings of honeybees. Within hours, 30 to 40,000 individuals can be murdered by this murdered hornet, and it's the way it carries out its execution is quite a gruesome one. It beheads the honeybees and then carries its thorax to feed to its young ones. So that's why it has earned the nickname the murder hornet. So typically it's a predator of a social insect, and since honeybees are quite important component of our food chain, since they are the major pollinators on which large number of flowering plants depend for their reproduction, and also the apiculture industry, which has significant stake in economics, also gets hit when such alarming attacks get in the notice. So yes, in human beings also it can cause a sting just like honeybees, and it's quite a painful one. And people who have survived the attack of this giant hornet have described the attack similar to being the pain has been experienced as the one which is being like a hot metal iron stick being stabbed into their body, because its mandibles, which are the lower jaw, are like sword like, and when they inject the sting it could cause anaphylactic shock. Yes, in Japan 40 individuals die annually because of this insect bite, but this number is not major considering even honeybee stings can cause anaphylactic shock. In US, roughly 80 individuals die. So but just that it is more toxic and more painful than a honeybee sting. And why it is called giant? Because this insect is roughly 2 inches. So it's quite large compared to the typical insects which we come across the daily life. So why this insect is suddenly in news? There are two reasons this week. The first one was a man in Spain, 54-year-old, was bitten by the sting of this Asian giant hornet, and it resulted in its death. So that set the alarm bells. And within next day, these insects were sighted in Washington state in US and Vancouver Islands in Canada. It set the alarm bell because this species represent an invasive species. Invasive species are the species which are not native to that particular region, as I have just discussed. This is just an Asian species. So ultimately it's not observed in America, and typically this species habitat is described as it prefers the low mountain regions and forested regions, and it avoids plains and high altitude regions. So Washington has certain areas have these conditions of low mountain forested where this has been carried out, but it's highly probable that a ship carrying a ballast water or any cargo could have accidentally carried this insect to these regions, and authorities have already sprung into action because they want to decimate it before it becomes a menace to it. So typically you have to revise the theme of invasive species as well while covering this theme. So this is the reason why this species is gaining notoriety, and is because it can pose a significant threat to bumblebees, because bumblebees in US are the major pollinators and they are already facing lot of threat. There is a specific you can say the pesticides on food, habitat destruction, and also the typical parasites such as the varroa mites are already causing the decline of their population, and coming to the viral outbreaks in such insects or further declining these populations. So this major predator, when it enters into their ecosystem, it can be quite a damaging one. So let's discuss that how it typically attacks the typical honeybees. So initially this insect will prefers to reside in an underground nest, and whenever it comes across any beehive, it will just reach the site and release a pheromone. Pheromones, you have to understand, just like in humans we hear the term hormones, which are chemical messengers to regulate metabolism. Insects also release similar chemical messengers which are called pheromones. They are used for multiple reasons, for attracting opposite sex, for mating. They are also used for defense purposes, marking their territory. So in this case, it is an alarm sign, or you could say the sign that they are attracting the other insects to reach at the spot. So it will slowly crawl into the hive, and if a group of 15 to 20 hornets reach at that beehive, within few hours they will just decimate the entire colony, and this slaughter and occupy strategy is what comes into the picture. So they will just carry the larva, the thorax to their larva, so that colony could be further increased. Yes, it's not that the bees give up so easily. In Asia, where they are native, they have already designed a mechanism to counter these villains. So how do Asian bees counter these insects? Roughly when the first insect will mark the pheromone, they will not react immediately. Otherwise, in honeybees there are three classes. There is a queen, which is a fertile female, there are drones, which are fertile males, and there is a worker class. The worker class are infertile females which gather food, create the hive, and also act as a soldiers in case of stress conditions. So in this case, the moment the hornet will enter the hive, a group of 300 to 400 workers will surround it and start flapping their wings. When they are doing this activity, the temperature in the hive increases to 45 degrees, and typically there is an increase in carbon dioxide level. So the hornet, if its other members fail to reach at time, it will get trapped and it will die of suffocation. So this is how they counter this insect of their own. But however, when this species has entered this American, or you could say European region, their bees are yet to adapt such or devise such mechanisms, because for them it will be straight away death, because they will not be able to react so sharply to this insect. So that's why the authorities will have to come manually into the picture and control this voracious predator of honeybees. So how are we controlling this, the murder hornet? The first, if there is an individual encounters it, they typically use a stick, a wooden stick, to just kill it, which we all do when some irritating insects comes into the picture. But that's not a practical solution if there is a group of swarm of some, say in hundreds or say thousands. So it's lot better to use the most common method, that at night time you just have to find their nest and use a poison, or you could just use a fire to burn them down in the night condition. That's the most common strategy. Otherwise, the apiary industry devises special hive shields in which they prevent the entry of this insect, because the honeybees are quite small in size, they are easily able to go through them and reach their hives, whereas this insect, which is roughly 2 inches, it fails to penetrate the shield. So that's another way of preventing these attacks. Since it's an invasive species, no country would prefer that their growth should not be checked at the earliest. So in Vancouver already they have been eliminated, and in Washington hopefully in few days you will see that they have been totally decimated, because no authority wants an economic loss associated with the apiary industry. Apiculture, we all know, is rearing of honeybees for commercial reasons, and it's quite a major contributor. So this is what we have for murder hornet, because this name is quite intriguing enough itself, and it's a quite appropriate name which is given to this Japanese Asian hornet, and it has been trending for all the wrong reasons, because the locust attack is already in news. So this is another insect which has garnered the same attention as locust, but in the Americas. So I hope this session was a useful one. It is a practice question which you could give it a try. Thanks for tuning in.